It's the Redirect Podcast. Search industry research, discussion, and analysis from the Black Truck Media and Marketing Headquarters. And now, redirecting you to the Black Truck team.
Welcome to episode 40 of the Redirect Podcast. It is Friday, March 30th, 2018. I'm Jason Dodge, founder of Black Truck Media and Marketing. I'm joined this week by Ashley from the Black Truck team. Hi, Ashley.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm great.
Good. It is. It's Good Friday as we come into the Easter holiday.
Yes.
And so there's quite a few people out of our office right now, and of course it's spring break, I think, in this part of Michigan. So that's why the lack of individuals, which has been really great for traffic. So, so a lot of chatter, a lot of discussion happening around whether or not there was another update, another algorithm update. The 28th is kind of what I think Search Engine Roundtable's Barry Schwartz was saying. There's a lot of chatter, on Twitter. I think too, kind of like Barry alludes to, like, is it new, or is it just continued from this rollout that we saw 2 weeks ago by now, right? Like the actual major confirmed rollout.
Right.
I don't know what in terms of the volatility that people are seeing. I have not seen anything yet that indicates like a run for the hills,
right,
type of thing. But I'll kind of take lead off with this, that Google has officially gone on the record and stated that it is rolling out mobile first indexing. So we've discussed it many times on the Redirect. We've defined it. We had that great interview that we did with Mobile Moxie, Cindy Crum, but this comes after like a year and a half of testing, and of course taunting the SEO community with what this was going to mean. But Google states that they're rolling it out to sites that follow best practices for mobile site indexing. So it is a widespread rollout, but they're going to roll it out to sites that follow best practices, and we can link to what those best practices are. But there was a quote in here that really stood out to me about Google really kind of saying, like, don't freak out if you're not in that initial wave. Because I went through and looked, there's no messages. We don't like, full disclosure, like, our site, not in the initial wave. I'm not concerned about it though. So this is a direct quote from them. Sites that are not in this initial wave don't need to panic. Mobile first indexing is about how we gather content, not how we rank content. So content gathered by mobile first indexing has no ranking advantage over mobile content that is not yet gathered this way, or desktop content. Moreover, if you only have desktop content, you will continue to be represented in our index. Now, that goes back to a few episodes ago, the definition of being indexed versus being ranked. Two very big things. But, I say keep an eye on it. You're going to see the notification in Search Console. Ashley, I know you were poking around a little bit more in Search Console actually this afternoon.
Yeah,
so
I was looking for that,
did
actually.
Did you see anything? Nothing coming up?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't check through our whole clientele, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So there is an official release on it, but I'm I think that it's slowly over time we're going to see it. I was checking some other stats, and if you're a Moz user, you'll see it in your main dashboard. You'll see a desktop versus mobile search visibility. You can see basically from about this fall, on most sites in most industries, you will see the desktop visibility start to go down, and you'll start to see the mobile visibility go up. So while we'll see mobile and desktop kind of both increasing, it's interesting. I've tested it on multiples to see the desktop visibility go down and the mobile visibility go up. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure how Moz defines that though, so that could be that could be misrepresented. So,
Yeah.
But anyways.
Interesting.
All right, shoot.
Well, all right. So since I just mentioned we were looking for that update to show up in Search Console, on the topic of updates, we've also discussed Google Maps a lot recently in the podcast as well. And a couple episodes ago, we talked about how you could now update your business's information in your Google My Business panel. So there would be a description now that will show up in your knowledge panel in Google search, where it would say from the business, and then there's a description. So I did update that for our listing recently, and it is showing up now. So just a reminder that to take advantage of that. And then some other updates from Google Maps. I have to give a hat tip to Matt Southern. He just shared this on the Search Engine Journal. You can now search and filter reviews on mobile on the Google Maps app.
Really?
For mobile. I have not tried it for desktop, so don't quote me on that. But this is at least for the most updated version of the Google Maps app for iOS. So you can, put in a keyword and do a search within the knowledge panel that would show up for a business that you're looking at in Google.
Nice.
So I tested that out a little bit. It's interesting. It kind of ties into the conversations we've had recently around reviews. On the spot, I kind of had maybe not the greatest example to work with, but it was the example that is in the Search Engine Journal article is on looking up reviews on the fries at Shake Shack or something like that, and I couldn't really think of anything unique to test on the spot, and I was looking at a different restaurant here in Grand Rapids. So it'll be interesting to see how people might be searching in reviews, but then it also makes me think about how when you are trying to recruit reviews from users, that you can suggest maybe some themes that you would like them to,
based on maybe some of those filtering categories, if you were savvy enough to know that, right?
So suggestions like if you serve customers in various areas, you might ask for them to leave a review on their experience working with you in Grand Rapids, or so then if someone was specifically doing a search trying to find information on Grand Rapids specifically, they might pull that up. So the reviews can be filtered, so they can be searched by keyword or by a search that you perform, but then they can also be filtered by relevancy. So we talked the other day or a couple episodes ago about what reviews would show toward the top, and that's usually the most recent ones. But now you can filter the reviews by either relevancy, which I'm not 100% sure what that means depending on the business, I guess, and then the newest reviews, and then you can also sort by the highest and lowest ratings. So there's a few, more options to be able to look through reviews if that's your thing, if that's how you're vetting a business. And so business owners should keep that in mind, and maybe.
I think too, if you're encouraging individuals, patrons to submit a review. Whether it's a follow-up in like a form letter, we've talked about those before, hey, thanks Ashley, I appreciate you, or we're honored to have your business, blah blah blah, would you mind reviewing us? It's a pretty simple ask. You're not really you're just asking, would you mind reviewing us? As you have a 50-50 shot, they're going to say yes or no. But providing them with a direct link and position in which they can make that review much easier. If you are a savvy enough, I think, marketer and understand how specifically Google Maps in this case works, at least in an Android device, Maps will ask you from time to time if you would like to, if you could provide feedback to an area that you visited or whatever, and it'll ask you questions about parking, or was it busy when you visited, and things of that nature.
Yep.
I think that would be very important to have baked into your review process as well, to be like, I don't want to go as far as saying front load the review, but to be able to make sure that you describe to people, hey, if you had a great parking experience, please, do put it out there. How is our concierge staff or something like that? I mean, if there was a way that the more descriptive on things related to what we know Google's going to be asking, along with the filtering topics, which I do believe are very closely related to the questions that they ask people, I think that is going to provide a better experience for Google, the engine, to understand how your business is locally. And not necessarily the user, but if you're understanding how Google is going to perceive it, I think that helps, because it is user-generated content at that point.
Right.
How about the part that you noticed, though, today? You were looking at a specific restaurant, testing your theory. Let's talk about that, if you could.
Well, I have to, I guess, edit this a little bit, because initially what I thought was I stumbled upon a Google local guide. So that's a designation that you can get through Google, through their locally focused services. As a consumer, you can sign up to be a local guide, and you can leave reviews, take photos, and kind of give other information about businesses that you visit. So submit that to Google through, I'm assuming it's all tied to the Google My Business. User-generated content for Google My Business. And in return, you'll get points.
Yes, so they've gamified it, right?
Yes.
It's gamification of Google Local, let's put it that way.
So I wish Adrienne was here, because I know that she does this, and it'd be good to get her perspective. But anyway, what I had stumbled upon when I was looking at reviews for this local business earlier was a review from a local guide that began with, "I didn't eat here, but I was walking by and I saw it." And you've probably stumbled upon a lot of these reviews.
The atmosphere looks cool.
Yeah. So the thing is, the reason I have to edit the story a little bit is because as I read on, it appears that maybe they did order dessert, but that was at the end of the review.
Interesting.
But they did submit photos. And at first glance, I thought I was seeing this review that was left with all these photos by this local guide, and they hadn't even stepped, foot inside as an actual patron.
Well, but think about that, though. I think with that, regardless of whether or not they ate there, or in this case, I know the business that you're talking about, they could have just easily just had drinks. No, they chose to lead with, well, we didn't eat there. They could have chose with, oh, we were wandering through and we stopped in for drinks. Okay, semantics aside.
Right.
It goes to question, can you be a guide, and could you just strictly be going after the gamification aspect of it, of getting all the points, not ever have to physically step into a location per se to be a patron, and affect negatively or positively a location's positions and rankings and reviews?
Right.
Absolutely you can. Like, who's policing that?
Yeah, I assume it has to be baked into their terms and conditions for signing up for something like this, but we know
Were you going to submit a receipt, right?
Right.
I mean,
we know how closely Google has monitored some things that we might say are spammy on some local things lately, or just historically. So just for clarification's sake, I don't know exactly what you get as, building up points, but I think it's access to different events.
Okay.
Or
personally, I have not dug into it just because I don't feel as if I have that kind of time.
Yeah. I left a review once, and then Google asked me if I wanted to sign up as a local guide.
You should have.
Well, I'm still thinking about it, but I think it's going back to I don't think I have time. I do really love writing reviews, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I love taking surveys. So if you have any surveys you need someone to take, send them my way. I'll probably take them.
No, that's. I think that's really good. I think it's really good. And we know too. We've talked about it that landscape is pretty. I mean, that's pretty volatile. You know, the maps in the local environment is pretty volatile.
But that shouldn't scare you away from wanting to engage with it.
I don't think so. Certainly not as a business. It shouldn't scare you away from engaging with it as a user either. Mm-hmm. Google kind of owns the market there, I believe, followed probably by Facebook. I don't know much that's even being populated properly, if anything, in the Bing side of it, the Microsoft world. But so Google really owns that aspect. But it'll be interesting. I know there's some really good speaker topics and stuff coming up in some conferences really soon that are going to deep dive into it. So I'm anxious to hear what some of the other professionals have to say too.
Cool.
That'll be good. So a lot of really good stuff coming out of Search Love San Diego, which was this past week, and one of them that I think we should totally link to is from Justin Brigsby is his company, and it's reverse engineering YouTube search. So it was last episode or 2 episodes ago, Adrian was polling us all on okay, well, talk to me about optimizing YouTube. And it, quite frankly, it follows pretty closely to what Justin has come up with here in terms of understanding. He went deep dive more, which SearchLove totally goes deep, technical SEO, but he went deep dive on how the YouTube search algorithm works. Wow. And looking at almost 4 million data points and 100,000 different videos. I mean, he went super geek on it, which I applaud him for that. But looking at the highest correlating ranking factors, and the tops are totally like video views, channel subscribers, likes. Like it's a for lack of better phrasing, it's a beauty pageant, right? It's a favorite. It's who's
popularity contest.
Yes, thank you. You know, so views, subscribers, likes, comments, channel views, right? I mean, those are the top 4 that he's outlined here. Then we get into things all the way down to the number of domains it's linked or embedded in. So sharing, positive ratings. Then he gets into keywords in the description, keywords in the title, things like that. So what we focused on was very much what would be like if you were to optimize a video, much like you would do on-page SEO, and he kind of followed similar suit, but he talked about some negative correlating factors, and that was like likes per view, title length, comments per view, number of broad match keywords. So it's interesting, the common themes and stuff. We'll have to share this. Basically text-based targeting, exact match, broad match. How do you define that in YouTube? He goes pretty deep in how you want to maybe analyze this. So I think this guide would certainly not be great for anybody who's just starting out. But totally, maybe if you have an active YouTube channel and you're starting to produce some better content, starting to get some traction, I think this could be a really great piece for us to share and be able to talk a little bit more about. So Justin produces some great content, so
cool.
It's worth sharing.
I have a quick question for you on that. We had a recent conversation with a client who is looking to create some video content, and we were discussing whether or not that video should be hosted on their website or on YouTube. So knowing that the number of websites that videos are embedded on, in this case, it may only be their website, but if they were to, if a client were to host video on YouTube, but then embed it in their site,
So I think that there's totally pros and cons of it. And knowing too that there's not a signal out there that says you're going to be penalized for, let's say, duplicating, meaning nobody's stopping you from having your video on YouTube the same that you would have on Vimeo, right? You could even, I would argue that you could probably even use a similar title. You could use a similar, description and call out. Maybe you want to make them a little bit different, but nothing's stopping you from doing that. The advantage of when we talk about hosting a video versus using YouTube, if you're, air quotes, hosting a video, I would say that you're most likely going to be hopefully using a service like Wistia. And even in that case, you are not hosting the video, right? Wistia is hosting the video, and it just happens to be served up on your page. But the advantage to something like a Wistia is that you're going to get all kinds of detailed analytics on that video, on that page, that you're not going to get from YouTube.
Right.
YouTube's analytics from that perspective are still vague in the sense of views and likes and things like that. Not what page did this video reside on, the types of view-through rate that it got on that page. You can't have call-outs and annotations and like pop-ups that say buy me now and calls to action. You can in some annotation level in YouTube, but not nearly to the level that you can use Wistia for. So if video was a big strategy or big selling point for this client or for your brand in general, I think that investing in something, you're investing in good video, investing in a tool like Wistia that can assist you with that, I think that's money well spent. And I say that because Wistia starts out at, I can't remember where it is, it might be $30 a month, it might be $100 a month, I can't remember. There's a cost to it. But it can be very beneficial to help feed the funnel.
Yep.
That's not to say you can't take that same video and put it on YouTube.
Right.
So that you try and get some of that search, the search factor that's happening on, the second largest search engine, which is YouTube. So I think there's benefits of both. If somebody's just starting to dip their toes in the waters of video, using video marketing in their inbound strategy, produce a couple, put them on YouTube, embed the video, and start to see where you go. Now you can certainly get, if you're savvy with it, you can certainly get crafty with Google Tag Manager, and tag those with custom events and triggers to say, okay, well, did somebody press play on that video, right? At least you could start to get some engagement metrics out of it to understand what happened there.
Right.
So I think that's a couple different ways to go about it. Or create unlisted videos. So there are videos that are in a channel. I have videos on my own personal channel that are more like for speaking pitches and things like that. So they're speaking samples. They're not. I suppose you might. I don't think you can publicly find them. They're on my channel. They're publicly viewable, but you're not going to be able to find them. It's kind of. I'm sure it's a gray area.
Unless you have a direct link.
Yeah.
Right?
So I suppose even in that regard, if you wanted to hack the system, so to speak, you could create a playlist that was unlisted and use them specifically for your site, but you're not going to get the search value there. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on, going back to my other hobby horse of content. I was going through my Feedly today and came across a recent post from Rand over on Spark Toro's blog.
Which is weird to say, right? You're trying to get it out of. You're trying to get out of you're trying to get Moz out of your Rand Fishkin connection. So this article is "Don't start your content marketing with what do my customers want." I read that one.
Yeah, on first read, it's a nice short article, but on first read, I was kind of like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Of course you want to think about what your customers want. But then, so basically he's saying, don't start with customer personas. Don't think about giving your current customers what they're looking for. And then, as I read it again, I understood. He's saying you're preaching to the choir, basically. You're talking to people you basically already have in the funnel. Whereas, with content marketing, you often want to extend beyond that. Not often, almost always, I would argue. Want to extend beyond what the people who might currently be in your funnel and capture their attention and get them interested in you. And so he's definitely going the route of you want to work with journalists and influencers, amplifiers, authors, podcasters, and media to reach your audience. So he kind of draws that line between customers and audience. So as a business, arguably your audience is anybody, although you want to define that to people who are actually going to be interested in what you have to offer. So he argues that using these influencers and journalists and media, making connections there and getting your content shared that way is more likely to achieve your marketing goals. And I agree, and obviously that's part of what SEOs do is make those connections.
Well, isn't that part of what SparkToro is going to do as well?
Exactly.
So it's a little heavy-handed there, Rand.
Ruined it.
Yeah.
You
Sorry.
ruined
Did I steal your
ending. Yes.
Did I steal your punchline?
Yes, that was going to be my little wrap-up. But, yeah. So I agree with him, but I have to put on, my SEO hat and tackle it a little bit from our perspective here. And, again, outreach and creating content to submit to publications is definitely part of what we do. And so, again, in that sense, I agree with him. But then I think about the approach that we use in our keyword research. We aren't only targeting existing customers. We're looking for opportunities to reach a wider, relevant audience through the selection of, the keywords and search terms that we choose. And building content to answer questions that aren't currently being answered. So you are going beyond your current pool. He draws a distinction between, customer-centric content that he argues would be better for using for e-newsletters and, if you have a product that they're using of yours, in-product content is what he said, versus externally focused content. So he's focused more on the externally focused content. So there's obviously there's going to be different goals for different types of content marketing. But yeah, in the end, he's building a tool for influencer and audience intelligence. So I'm not surprised.
But I think there's some really great comments on this blog too. That's where I kind of went, and one of the ones was, maybe perhaps this could have been something more like don't always start your content marketing or don't start all your content marketing with what do my customers want? And I think that that's a very valid point. And this plays well in with some other things that Rand has talked about in the past about, developing content for individuals that know your brand and are familiar with your brand, but maybe have purchased from you or maybe those that haven't purchased from you. But then there's other people that don't know a thing about your brand, and they're very much that problem solution seeker. I question, does that problem solution seeker go into this bucket of what do my customers want? I think no, it doesn't, because that totally goes into more of how individuals seek out products is because they have no idea necessarily what they want. Or sometimes they do, but they're searching based on problems. Now, match that up with influencers or people that can influence your customers or people who are of authority that are talking about your product. So all of a sudden I have multiple pieces of content out there talking about my brand and my product on other sites, as well as my own branded content that's talking about problem, solution, product. That's a win-win-win all the way down to a conversion. So I totally get where he's going. I'm interested to see how his tool rolls out, but I think it's certainly a little bit of a mind shift for people. But I also believe that we talk about it a lot here, that so many marketers are very, very focused on my product. I need to talk about my product. Well, if your customer doesn't know what your product is, they don't know what your brand is, even if they know what your product is, you have one product amongst 50 other manufacturers that produce that same product. How do you stand out? How are you standing out in that sea of products? So, man, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
constant battle for sure. Awesome. I would like to end on a quick piece here. I think it's a question that we get asked often is how quickly will we see improvements from any type of SEO work that's done? I think that one is also very difficult for most SEOs to answer, just because there's so many factors that come into play. Anything from the volatility and movement within an industry or vertical to age, history of domain, etc. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of factors that come in there, and I'm sure like doctors, you get 5 SEOs in a room, you ask them the same question, you're gonna get 5 different answers. But what about major changes to a site? We're talking not just little incremental changes, but like major ones. So Jennifer Slegg from the SEM Post pointed out recently in a conversation that John Mueller pointed out, Google's John Mueller, that major changes can take months, sometimes up to half a year. So months meaning up to 6 months until you actually see the results of what the work that you've put into it. So that's not to say you shouldn't just stand on the sidelines waiting for things to happen. I mean, you should continue to be producing content, honing your strategy. Mm-hmm. But when you make like major restructure and shift changes and things like that, a good benchmark and rule of thumb for us is we're always looking at about that 3-month mark, that 90-day mark, which can really, hopefully by then we can start to see some movement, good, bad. I mean, by that point, I hope that we can see some movement. But I think what John's saying here just further, more or less validates that thinking that this can take some time depending on what we're doing. So if you're trying to produce some content on a hot streak or something that's super buzzworthy, like unless you're a real known brand or your content's going to get shared socially and really get amplified out there, I have to question it still might be worth producing that content and making those changes even, but man, the likelihood that you're going to get picked up and that it's going to really have an impact on from an SEO perspective, you might be better off just packing a lunch for it's the long play, right? It still is the long play.
And I think people might understanding that things do change a lot in the digital world, and that's why we have this podcast basically to keep up on everything. But yeah, it's kind of good to have that reminder that it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. No, I agree. If you want the sprint, let's talk PPC campaigns. But hey, that's for another time. We can talk about maybe we'll talk about how we do we could use content marketing efforts to help fuel PPC. So. All right, cool. Well, we've covered a lot of topics there. There's a lot happening. Algorithm updates, mobile search index. Keep an eye out for Search Console messages to come through to let you know there will be an official message that comes through from what we're reading. Google My Business reviews, how maybe they're gaming or not gaming the system, and how fast you might see results from major changes to your site as it means to SEO. So. Until next time, good luck.
This has been the Redirect Podcast. Check out the show notes at blacktruckmedia.com and add us on iTunes and Stitcher.